and welcome. My name is Kamo Gwangwa. Thank you so much for joining me in today's conversation. And if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and share this channel so that we can build a community of people that just come together and have practical Christian conversations. Today, I don't have a topic sort of to talk about, but I do have a story in the Bible from Genesis 24 that I really love, and I want you and I to study it together. It is the story of Isaac and Rebecca, how they meet, marry, and the story goes on from there. So it is in Genesis 24. Let's get into it. So before we even get started into Genesis 24, in Genesis 22, that's the story where the Lord asks Abraham to go to Mount Moriah and sacrifice Isaac, the son of the promise. So another story for another day, but Abraham and Isaac go to Mount Moriah. God saves Isaac through a lamb in the thicket. My point is that Rebecca is first mentioned in that story. Like, it just blows my mind that out of all Bethuel's children, out of all Rebecca's cousins, she's the girl that's picked out, she's singled out and mentioned. Bethuel had Laban, but Laban is not mentioned in the picture. Rebecca's brother is not mentioned in Genesis 22. But Rebecca is. Like, yeah, it just blows my mind. And right there is a sign that there's something powerful. There's just something about Rebecca and her role to play in the greater scheme of things. God's plan for Rebecca in the greater scheme of things. There's a hint right there that there's something about this girl. So in Genesis 24, where our study begins, from verse 1 to verse 8, Abraham sends his servant on a mission. He says to the servant, "Take an oath. Do not let my son marry any of these Canaanite women. Don't take my son back to where we came from. For him to marry the girl, whoever he marries must come from our home and marry here with Isaac, because the Lord said he would bless us here." And the servant agrees. He takes an oath and he sets on his way. And when the servant gets ready to leave, Isaac says, Abraham says, there is one condition on which you can break this agreement, this oath. And that condition is if the girl you find doesn't want to come back. And isn't it like God in our lives who gives us free will? God doesn't force us to do anything. God gives us free will. God gives us his commandments, and it is up to us if we will obey the commandment. God gives us instructions, and the willingness to obey is your choice. So the servant here is the same. Abraham says, we have made an oath, but if she is unwilling, you are free from the oath. The servant does not waste time. He loads camels. 10 camels to be exact. Okay, this points us to Abraham's wealth. Like 10 camels. It's not like 10 camels and then that's it. Abraham has none. No. It's not like after this servant leaves, Abraham now has to do everything by himself. Nobody to work his fields. Nobody in the house. No, this servant takes others with him. He takes 10 camels. That's like 10 limousines. Camels in that day were like Rolls Royce. 10 of them loaded with gifts for this wife that they are going to find, for this gift for the wife and her family, loaded with gifts. Like, if that doesn't hint at just how wealthy Abraham was. The servant leaves, and this is not just a 2-day journey. Sometimes we read the Bible and we think these things happen overnight. These people didn't have aeroplanes and cars. They walked, and he was traveling with camels and traveled 2 months. Like, I can believe it. I can't believe that the servant traveled 2 months, because he was traveling with camels, and camels are not the fastest of animals. Anyway, he travels with his entire entourage with these gifts, and he finally gets to Abraham's home country. When he gets to the home country, he stops at a well. He must have been thirsty. He must have been tired and looking thirsty and looking like he's, in need of water. The Bible doesn't say that. That's what I think. And he gets to this well. And when he gets to this well, he doesn't even waste time like, oh Lord, let me rest. Let me find an inn. And then, no. He doesn't say, let me set up camp. And then the next day we'll go find. Immediately, when he gets to the land, he finds a well. He sits there and he prays to God. When he prays and he says, the Lord of my master, Abraham. And you may read it and think, why is he praying the Lord of my master Abraham? Did he not believe for himself? Did he not trust God for himself? And you must remember that this servant grew up in the presence of Abraham. He was practically raised by Abraham. He's older than Isaac. So he's seen Abraham through many stages of his life, even those stages of Abraham's life that are not mentioned in the Bible. This servant has seen Abraham's faith. And he says, with all the faith that brought Abraham from his home country to where he is now, all the faith that Abraham took his only son to the mountain, knowing that God would bring or raise Isaac from the dead if he had to, or somehow save Isaac. All that faith that Abraham used, the faith that says, my Lord will make me and my descendants as numerous as the sand on the seashore. That faith that Abraham was holding on to, that's the faith I am praying in. That's the faith I'm praying in. And the servant took this assignment so seriously. Like, he became Abraham's proper representative to find a wife for Isaac. Can we discuss the servant's prayer? First of all, God is not obligated to give the servant a sign. But I love that the servant does ask for a sign. He needs a sign so that he doesn't make a wrong decision. This is marriage, a wife for Isaac. He doesn't want to disappoint Abraham and bring the wrong girl back home. He doesn't want to disappoint or fail Isaac and have a woman that will really bring destruction to his life. He understands the seriousness of his assignment. So when he prays, he says, Lord, the woman that you have chosen, when I ask her for water, may she give me water, and may she offer water to my camels as well. The task is not impossible. It's not humanly possible, but it is a stretch. The servant could have asked for fire to come down from heaven. The servant could have asked for a whirlwind. He could have asked for rain. He could have asked for a halo on top of Rebecca's head, and God could have done that. But the servant asks for a sign that is humanly possible, but divine in its execution. Like, he says, God, use the natural to show me the supernatural. The servant asks this of God, and even before he's finished praying, God is like, I can do that. That's not very difficult for me to do. Rebecca shows up. I don't think that Rebecca was the only woman coming to the well, or at the well in that moment, because it was about around the time that the women in the city were coming to draw water. But Rebecca comes towards the servant. I'm pretty sure everyone else at the well or coming to the well was just wondering, who is this with 10 camels? Why are there so many gifts on the camels? Who, what, why, when, why? Rebecca must have been asking herself the same question. And when she sees the servant run to her, she must have been like, excuse me, sir, what is happening? Who are you? What can I do for you? And another thing that I want to touch on is the servant runs to Rebecca. He recognizes that this could be the answer to my prayer. Isn't it just like us that, or isn't it an example for us that when we ask God of something, we give God a basis, a platform for him to bless us? The Bible says the Lord will bless the work of our hands. But if there isn't any work, there isn't anything to bless. If your faith does not have works, does not have deeds, it is dead. If you're going to ask God for a job, then put your CVs out there so that God has a platform that he can bless you. The servant recognizes that this could be my answered prayer. And please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying no, we don't help God, but we give God a platform for him to bless us, for him to give us the answer to our prayers. And the servant runs towards Rebecca, and he says exactly what he told God he would say. He goes to Rebecca and says, "Can I please have water?" Rebecca looks at him, must have looked at him and thought, traveler, he must have come from far. Looks around, camels. Okay, they must have come from far as well. They must have been walking, traveling. Maybe he had dust on him. You could tell that he was traveling anyway. This just shows us Rebecca's heart for people, love for people, her heart of service. She gives him water. After she gives him water, she says, "Let me give water to your camels as well." She says, I'll water your camels as well. And the servant sits back and looks like, God, did you just answer my prayer immediately? Like, I wish God would answer my prayers like that, because there are some prayers God takes his time in answering. But God answers the servant's prayer immediately. If that is not God's divine hand, divine orchestration of the situation, I mean. So he sits and watches. He must have been waiting for Rebecca to complain. Must have been waiting for Rebecca to ask for help from the other girls that were also there watering, fetching water. The servant must have been waiting for Rebecca to ask for help from the servant, because remember, the servant had other people he was with. And Rebecca didn't do that. She offered herself, and she committed to the task that she offered herself to. It's 10 camels, ne? I think one camel does not drink 1 liter of water. A camel that has been traveling for months must have maybe 10 liters of water. Each camel, 10 liters of water. Rebecca gave water to those camels without complaining, and it just shows her heart for service, her commitment to the word of her mouth. She is a woman of her word. And after she has done this, the servant is just like, who are you? Who are you? And Rebecca says, I'm Rebecca. My father is Bethuel. My grandparents are Nahor and Milcah. And the servant says, this is God. This is God. What? The servant is just too excited. And he says, worships God right there and then. He worships the God of Abraham, his master, right there and then, and says that the Lord led me to my master's relatives. Remember, Abraham said, do not let my son marry outside. My son must marry our relative. And look what God did. God made it happen. God ordered the servant's steps. The servant praises the Lord, worships in that moment, puts a nose ring on Rebecca, bangles on her hand. Rebecca is also just beside herself. She's so excited. She leaves the servant at the well, runs to her home. And when she gets there, she must have been out of breath. She must have, like here and there in telling her family what happened. And her brother's like, whoa, I want to go to the well and see this for myself. Laban goes to the well, finds the servant there. The servant, Laban's like, Rebecca says, you are Abraham's servant, Abraham, my uncle. The servant says, yes. Laban says, waste no time. Let's go to my father's house. They get to Rebecca's house. Laban says, listen, don't worry, your camel's taken care of. You and your servants will have a place to stay. Come, let's go to my house. When they get to Rebecca's home, the servant refuses to eat. The servant was so committed to the task at hand that he was fasting for Isaac. He was fasting for Isaac's wife. He was fasting for Abraham, like my master sent me on this mission. I understand the seriousness of the mission that I am on. I'm not eating, like, don't give me food. Let me tell you what just happened. Like, he was just overwhelmed, and he retells them the story of what happened. And Rebecca's family listened to the story, and Laban, Rebecca's brother, must have been saying, we've been hearing of Abraham all our lives from our parents, how Abraham left us and followed a God we didn't know to wherever. And now Abraham is back here to find a wife. What? So they believed this. They understood what they had no choice but to believe and see the hand of God in this whole story. And again, the servant says, if you allow me, I will take Rebecca and we will leave and she will be my master's son. Tell me now if you agree or you don't agree. Again, the element of free will is there. Like, God does not force anything of us. It is your choice. The invitation for salvation is here. It is your choice to accept it. God's commandments are here. It is your choice to obey them. God's instruction is laid out before us. It is your choice to follow. And the servant again gives or shows us that element of free will. And he says, are you agreeing or are you disagreeing for me to take Rebecca so that she becomes Isaac's wife? And the family is like, who are we to stand in the way of this divine moment, this divine encounter? Take her. And they spend the night. I don't think the servant was able to sleep. I don't think Rebecca was able to sleep. Very early the next morning, the servant wakes up and he says to Rebecca's family, please let me go. Let me take Rebecca. Let's just set us on our way. Send us on our way. Rebecca's family says, no, wait, give us 10 days. We want to have a proper send-off for Rebecca. We're going to miss her. We probably will never see her again. And the servant says, do not delay me. Hey, you remember that part where the servant says, do not delay me? The servant is making no room for what if. What if I heard God wrong? What if Rebecca's not the one? What if this family changes their mind? What if by the time I get there, Abraham is no more? Remember, he's 140 years old. What if I get there and Isaac is being inquisitive and curious with a Canaanite woman? he leaves no room for what if. Like, listen, don't waste my time. Like, this is urgent. God has answered my prayer. What else are we waiting for? Let's go. And the family tries to convince the servant otherwise, and the servant is like, listen, I need to go. And the family sees they can't convince the servant anyway, and they call Rebecca. They call Rebecca so that they can ask her, are you willing to go with this man? And Rebecca's response just melts my heart. They ask her, are you willing to go with this man? And she says simply, I will go. Rebecca's willingness to walk in the prophetic destiny that God has for her. Rebecca's willingness to obey God in that moment is just like, my girl. Woo! She just warms my heart. And when I was thinking of God doing or us obeying God's will, what will it take for us to enjoy the fullness of God's blessing? Here's a thought that I want to read to you that came to my mind as I was thinking on our willingness to serve God, our willingness to obey God. And I wrote, the only way to see God's best is if we surrender our expectations, our outcomes, what we want to see. We need to surrender the manifestation thereof to God's timing and plan. We need to have a willing heart to see God's best for us. Expect it any way possible. Your expectation is limited. God's wisdom is unlimited. Relax. God is in control. Let him do it his way. Relax. Wait. Pray and watch God do it for you his way. His instruction for you is to pray and wait on him. Don't lose your patience. Wait on God. God trusts you. He knows you can wait. He knows you can fight the wait the right way. Otherwise, he wouldn't have chosen you. Do you believe that God has chosen you? Then wait. So, Rebecca's answer to her family's question, will you go with this man, was Rebecca saying, I've waited patiently for God and I'm willing to let God work out his plan for my life his way. Rebecca says, I will go, and they waste no time. Her family had no choice but to bless her. Her family had no choice but to bless her because Rebecca herself had agreed to go with the servant, and they give her a blessing. They must have been scared that they will never see her again, and they give her this blessing. May the Lord bless you, may he make you a mother of millions, and may he make your descendants strong. And they bless her the best way they know how in that situation. The servant leaves them with gifts that he brought for them, and he heads with Rebecca. He starts with Rebecca on this journey. Rebecca did not know this man. She met him the day before. She didn't know just how far she could actually trust this man. Does this country that we are going to even exist? Does the master and his son even exist? Like, Rebecca was like, Lord, I am trusting you. Have you been in situations where, like, God, you or I perish? I've been in this situation and I've prayed that prayer so many times, like, God, you or nothing. You or it, I'm doomed. And that's what is Rebecca essentially is saying. And she has no choice. She trusts this man. She trusts the God that this man is talking of. And they go on this journey to the country where Isaac is. When they finally get to Isaac, Isaac is in the field meditating. And I love that about Isaac. He's not he's not just sitting there watching the sky and the birds go by. He's meditating. And he is in the presence of the Lord. We don't know what he was praying about, but it is important that we note that he was in the Lord's presence, seeking God for himself. It is my prayer for us singles, single ladies, that when we find or when we are found, may we not be found by a man who will draw us away from God. If it draws you away from God, or if he draws you away from God, he's not from God. My prayer is that the same way Isaac was found in the presence of the Lord, may the husbands that God give us be found in him. Like, may we not find marriage material for ourselves. You know, situations where you find marriage material. No. God, like, we must be so hidden in God that he has to be in the presence of God to find us. And that is where Isaac was. And he looks up and spots the caravan. Rebecca looks and spots Isaac. And she asks, who's that? It's like a love at first sight moment is happening, unfolding right in front of everybody's eyes. Isaac looks and sees the camels. Rebecca looks and sees. She hides her face. After she's told who Isaac is, she hides her face with a veil. Oh, what a modest woman of God. So she hides her face. The servant tells Isaac the story in Rebecca's hearing. And Isaac is just like, Lord, my God, this is the woman for me. This could not have been anyone else but God in the story. Isaac sees how God orchestrated Rebecca for him. And he takes Rebecca and they are married and they love each other in that moment. Isaac loves Rebecca instantly. Isn't it like God to love us regardless of what our past looks like? God loves us no matter how dirty our past is. And, you know, I'm not saying Rebecca's past was dirty, but Isaac didn't know Rebecca. Isaac didn't know Rebecca's history, but he loved her unconditionally. He loved her. He saw Rebecca, saw God. In that moment, he fell in love with her. And the promise that God has spoken to Abraham to give him many descendants, to give Abraham as descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, the promise begins to unfold beautifully so. And it was not Rebecca's own doing. It was not Isaac's own doing. It wasn't even the servant's own doing or even Abraham's doing. It was God from the beginning to the end. And that is it for today. Thank you so much for studying the story of Isaac and Rebecca with me. As I always say, God has a plan and a purpose for your life, and it is never, ever too late for you to walk in his plan. Until next time, I love you. Bye.